right, let's talk about the impacts on society from flooding, shall we? All right. Before we do, I'm going to give you another part of the super secret code. It is the number 3. You got me? The number 3. One more time, the number 3. All right. So, there's primary hazards and secondary hazards associated with flooding. So, damage caused by water, currents, debris, erosion, and deposition of sediment. Those are all primary related directly to the flooding itself. Secondary hazards include water pollution, famine, disease, homelessness. So it wasn't the flood that killed me. It was the flood destroyed the farm and I couldn't eat anymore, so I died. Or I played in flood water, I got a disease and died. So those would be secondary. Now, flooding, as far as global statistics are concerned, is a big deal. So this image shows the number of people affected by weather-related disasters. And this is of the global population. 56% of the global population from 1995 to 2015 were somehow affected by flooding. Drought, storms, heat, wildfires, landslides. So 56% of the entire world was somehow affected by a flooding disaster. Not even a hazard, disaster. And when you look at all the natural disasters that occurred during this time period, 43% of all of those disasters that occurred were floods. That's the percentage of occurrence of natural disasters by type. So of all the natural disasters that occurred in that time period, 43% of them were floods. Globally speaking, flooding is a big deal. It can cause widespread disasters. So this looks at the number of weather-related disasters in that same time period. The darker colors are going to be much higher. You can see, so China, India, the United States. Can you guess why China and India and the United States have the highest weather-related disasters? Not a hazard, but a disaster. The most people. China, India, the United States, Brazil is up there as well. So the more people, the more likely they're going to be affected, therefore a disaster. Remember, hazards and disasters are two different things. Are there benefits to floods? Think about it. Are there any benefits to floods? While you're pondering that question, let me give you another part of the super secret code. It is the number 4. You got me? The number 4. One more time, the number 4. So, what are some benefits of floods? Because they're out there. A little bit more than what you think. Definitely more than tsunamis. Definitely more than tsunamis, that's for sure. So they can provide fertile sediment for farming. So when areas do flood, they can kind of fill up with water, but that water oftentimes is carrying sediment, other organic material, and it deposits that material kind of where the floodwaters are standing. So it can, in essence, deposit this material, creating a very rich, fertile soil. So flooding naturally fertilizes the land. Interesting. It can benefit aquatic systems. How so? It might help flush out stream channels and remove debris. So let's say you get a flash flood moving down kind of a stream channel. Anything that was kind of funking up that stream channel can kind of get pushed out and washed out and clean out that area. So they can help to benefit aquatic ecosystem. And it can also sweep nutrients and other food supplies downstream, maybe in the case that there might not have been some or less than what is necessary. And then sediment deposition itself, other than creating fertile farming, it builds up elevations and keeps areas above sea level. So the more it floods, the more sediment is going to be deposited. So the higher elevation is going to make these areas to eventually, where it's going to be high enough, it won't flood anymore. So if you just let it flood a bunch and let that material deposit that's going to settle out of the water, it's going to build that area up. So eventually it won't flood. Interesting. And this it would also help to prevent some damage and flooding caused by hurricanes and just any general floods as well. So, they're not all a bad thing. So should we stop all the floods? Should we try to control all the floods? Maybe yes, maybe no. Can humans cause floods? If so, how so? Think about it. Can humans cause floods? Can humans cause floods? I'm going to give you a hint. It's yes. So human activity can significantly affect flooding frequency and scale. We can't control the weather, but we can control, where that water goes, in essence, if that makes any sense. So there are some activities that humans do that affect flooding. For instance, land use changes. Land was typically used for this thing, and now we're using it for something else. It was a forest, now it's a housing development. So by changing how the land is used, that can definitely affect flooding in that area. More on that in a little bit. Dam construction. Both behind the dam, when you build the dam and it floods up with water, it can flood communities, but also downstream if they have to release water or the dam breaks. Urbanization. So when we put stuff where there wasn't stuff before. Think about the Phoenix area. Think about the surrounding area, how much of it, even around Avondale and EMCC, how much of the farm area is now being turned into houses and apartments. And you're taking this ground in which water can soak into and then covering it up with houses, apartments, roads, sidewalks, parking, whatever it may be. That's called urbanization. And then growing population in flood-prone areas. Don't live there, right? Why are more people moving to New Orleans? Why is New Orleans growing in population? Shouldn't it be shrinking? Shouldn't people want to move away? I mean, New Orleans isn't getting any better. It's only continuing to get lower and lower below sea level. But so anyway, moving and living where places maybe we probably shouldn't. So let's talk about some of these. So as far as land use changes, again, clear-cutting forests creates bare ground that tends to repel water. When we have forests and when the trees soak up the ground or soak up the water, excuse me, sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. So the trees do a good job of spreading out their roots, holding dirt and soil in place, but also sucking up any moisture from the soil. So when it rains, if there's trees there, it can soak up that water, or it's kind of an anchor for that dirt, so that water kind of soaks into the dirt and the dirt doesn't just rush downhill. But when you clear the forest, when you cut down all the trees, you don't have that anymore. So when rain does fall, it just runs off towards a low-lying area, sometimes carrying branches, soil, and other debris along with it. And this is kind of now tiptoeing into kind of mass wasting and landslides, which will be next unit. And so without that vegetation to hold that material in place, flooding can produce mud flows and debris flows. So kind of a cascading effect, a multiplying effect. Wildfires can produce the same effect as well. Burning down vegetation, you don't have that vegetation. When it rains, it's going to soak into that area and just slosh right downhill. So in a wildfire, you have a bunch of ash now. When ash gets wet, it turns into mud and just flows right downhill. So this very same thing happened in Flagstaff in the Schultz fire. So here's the town of Flagstaff. Here's the San Francisco mountain, that stratovolcano up there, a bunch of these cinder cone volcanoes over here. So there was a wildfire right in this area on the eastern flank of the San Francisco mountain. And so what I just described happened. Wildfire, vegetation gone, big rainstorm hit, mixed with all that ash and debris. That material came rushing down the sides of the mountains and flooded into kind of this areas. All these little dots you see are housing developments. So this floods kind of just washed into, this debris flow kind of just washed into this development that was built there. So a few things, land use changes and maybe living places where we probably shouldn't. So dam construction. Again, can create flooding behind the dam where water is stored. It can also create flooding downstream of the dam as water is released, or if there's some sort of breakage. The water that is released is usually free of sediment, so that's faster moving water coming out of the dam, which could cause flooding. But again, dam failures also occur and have also created massive flooding events like Johnstown in Pennsylvania. So please watch this video on some dam failures. It's absolutely mind-boggling and sad to watch, but please watch that video. So, but dam construction, a good example of this would be the Aposolimas Dam and the Sfentili village in Greece. So this dam was created, and it to store water behind it, and you can see some structures back here and some houses up here as this dam is now beginning to fill up. So you can see them back there. So before the water was there, a little village, little bit on that kind of ground floor, and then kind of a little bit more up on the hill. But they built the dam. All right, they built the dam. The waters rise. So people had to move away from this and this part of the village. People were displaced. All right. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. People were displaced. You can see now the bottom is completely covered. Now it's creeping into the area up on the hill. So the dam was finished in 2015. It displaced 80 residents. Well, that sucks. You know, it's like, well, you got to leave because your house is going to be underwater. So, sorry, I just got to write this down here. So that's 80 residents. But the dam now serves as primary freshwater source and supply for 300,000 people. 80 people, 300,000 people. 80 people, 300,000 people. It's never probably an easy idea to want to flood a village, but 80 people, 300,000 people. 80 people, 300,000 people. You get the drift. So yeah, but this isn't the only dam that has done that. In China, along the Yangtze River. Oh, hello again, Yangtze River. Good to see you. They built something called the Three Gorges Dam. The dam is 1.3 miles long. It's the biggest dam, one of the world's longest and highest dams in the world. There's some other ones pretty big. In fact, even here in the United States, up in Washington. But in any case, the area that will be flooded currently provides fertile farmland for 40% of China's grain and 70% of its rice crop. So they're building this dam here. It's gonna back up the Yangtze River and create a reservoir all the way back here to this town. So it's going to be a distance of 360 miles. It's going to submerge 140 towns, 326 villages, under 418 square miles of water. Yeah, but, all right, you know, it's going to force nearly 1.2 million people to move from these fertile farmlands along this 360-mile stretch along this river. However, it is going to positively affect a number much larger than that. It's used to create electricity. It's used to control the Yangtze River, so maybe it doesn't flood so much and kill all those people like it has historically. So, you know, it does have you know, the pros and cons. So that's what you gotta have to kind of weigh. But just think about the environmental impact from that alone. All right. Now, here's the bad thing. On top of all that other stuff, this dam is not doing so well. This dam isn't very old. It's maybe 15, 20, 30 years old. It's already showing its age. It's so big, it might buckle under the pressure. And if that does, it's going to be even greater disaster. So, yeah. So you gotta kind of weigh the good with the bad. You know, you gotta kind of weigh the good with the bad. You know, 80 people, 300,000 people, 1.2 million people in China moved from their farmlands, or the over 1 or 2 billion people help that China already has. You know, is the greater good better than the individual? You know, there's no easy answer to that. There's no easy answer to that question. So anyway, we'll pause here. When we come back, we'll finish talking about the impacts, and then we'll send you on your way. I'll see you in just a second.